Okay, I just shot one through the brush right here. All right, we got blood. We got more blood here. More blood here. I got the tracker cat out here, but he's screwing up my trail here. Got some blood right here. Now I need to find the next kick up of blood. There's a kick up right here. All right, looks like a pretty good possibility that came across this creek right here. But now I'm not seeing blood, so I'm worried. Okay, we got more blood right here. It definitely went uphill. All right, we got more blood here. Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, back down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom. I've got quite a few accoutrements laid out here and things for the 12 gauge single shot shotgun. Now you could use most of this stuff with a side-by-side 12 gauge as well. And most of these break open shotgun styles are interchangeable with what we're going to talk about. You just have to pay attention to what choke you have on that shotgun. So speaking for me, I generally use a modified choke 99% of the time. And then I also have the gun that we talked about yesterday, which is a Tracker 2, H&R Tracker 2, which is a rifled slug gun. And I use it a lot for a brush gun. We're going to talk about that a little bit today too, because it's not a whole lot. I've got a New England here as well that I use, and this is a smooth bore. But the barrel length difference is about, 3 inches, something like that, maybe 4 inches even. Yeah, probably maybe more like 4 inches between the two. Both of them work fantastic in the Eastern Woodlands for me. I love them both. One's rifled, one's a smooth bore. Now I had some questions yesterday about, well, how shots shoot out of that rifled barrel. I'm gonna show you today. It's not as bad as you think it would be. And if it's a brush gun and you're shooting game up close, 15 yards and in, it's not a problem. I'm gonna show you that today. So if you choose to carry a gun like that, you're not hurting yourself unless you're trying to use a shot at a long distance. If you're trying to shoot squirrels out of a tree with it at 35 yards, you're gonna have some effect from that rifling in the barrel on the pattern itself. But up close range in the brush, it's not gonna make enough difference to make a difference. You're still gonna put meat on the table. However, you can use a smooth bore for that, which is what I use a lot. And this is a modified smooth bore in that it's had sights put on it by a gunsmith. So while it's a smooth bore, it has rifle style sights on the gun. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about the ammunition that we used for black powder, and we talked about ball ammunition. And I talked about the difference between a chewed ball and a regular cast round ball. Let me see if I can get a couple of those out of here real quick. So again, that chewed round ball, which I'll get some close-ups of here in a few minutes and splice it over the top of this. That chewed round ball has just been taken and put on a flat surface with a horsehoof rasp and worked around to put dimples in the ball itself. You don't need that in a rifled barrel because the rifling does that work for you and it's just counterproductive. But for a smooth bore, it gives you more aerodynamics having that dimpling on the ball itself. A lot of times I just grab whatever I grab and I shoot it out of the gun. Again, a lot of people asked me yesterday on yesterday's video, well, how does that pattern? What's the shot pattern at, how does that slug pattern, at 50 yards, whatever the case may be? Honestly, I don't care. If I can shoot a deer 20 yards and in and kill it almost every single time that I shoot it through the brush, that's all I care about. I don't care how well it patterns any better than that. Same thing with a shotgun. If I can take a shot 20 yards and in at a rabbit or a squirrel on the ground or a grouse or something like that and kill it every time, I don't care how well it patterns. I don't need a paper target to tell me, hey, this is a better pattern than this and this is a tighter pattern than that. If it's killing game, that's all I care about. And so I don't get real technical with that stuff, and you'll have to excuse me for that. But, I'm kind of I like to dummy things down. If it's killing game, it's good enough. If it's killing game where I want it to and putting meat on the table, it's good enough. So that's just my take on that. But what I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about today was, I wanted to make one correction to the video I made yesterday where I misspoke, and I'm dyslexic and sometimes my brain doesn't work real well. We talked about the difference between the SB1 and the SB2 frame. The SB2 frame is the stronger frame of the two. So if you're using a heavy caliber pistol or rifle cartridge like a Magnum load or something like a 223, you're going to want an SB2 frame. And generally speaking, the barrel will have marked on the barrel what frame it needs to be on. And if you bought an original gun, you're going to have that. But if you look at the frame itself, when you take the barrel off and you look down the frame toward the back of the hammer, one of them is skeletonized and one of them is kind of solid. The solid one is the SB1 frame. The skeletonized or reinforced frame is an SB2 frame. The tracker model only requires an SB1 frame to shoot 3-inch slugs out of. So you can put a lot of power in this tracker and not worry about it. However, if you're going to shoot Magnum pistol loads or heavy rifle loads out of it, you're not going to want to do that with an adapter out of this gun. You would want an SB2 frame for that. I haven't had any problems with anything I've shot out of them so far, so that's just technical data I'm trying to give you ahead of the game. Now, let's go back to real quick mentality before we load these things up and shoot them, because I did kill a deer yesterday. It's at the beginning of this video. Shot it through the brush, tracked it a couple hundred yards, found it dead. So what I want to talk about first with this is why 12 gauge? Because a lot of people, I see comments all the time on my videos where people will be like, well, I prefer a 20 gauge. Well, I love my 16 gauge. There's nothing wrong with that. I love them too. Here's my thing. When it comes to a gun that I'm going to use in the woods all the time, no matter what the conditions are, no matter what time of day it is, no matter when it is, I want something that's as versatile as it can possibly be. And the one thing that a 12 gauge has over a 20 gauge, in my opinion, the biggest thing it has, is that all the shells are not the same color. Why does that make a difference? It makes a difference if you are carrying some kind of a game getter load and you've got several different shells in your shot bag and you can't tell the difference because the labels have worn off of them and they're all yellow. Now, the only thing I can tell the difference in is a slug by looking down the top of the round. Other than that, I can't tell 6-shot from 8-shot, from double-aught buck, from number 4, or anything else unless it's a slug. With a 12 gauge, if I purchase my ammo correctly, I can tell, number 1, by high brass or low brass, and number 2, by color of the shell, exactly what's in my bag. And I'll show you an example of that real fast. All right, so looking at this loadout right here, let's just say this is a common loadout. And I look at this and I wonder what's what, and the labels are worn off of everything. I know that the long black shells with the high brass are Magnum turkey loads. I know that the gray with the long brass is a Magnum slug. I know that all the OD greens are double-aught buck. I know the low brass blacks are all number 6. And I know that the high brass green is number 4. It's that simple. I can color code, mix and match, and understand what's what, and not worry about whether those labels wear off in the bag down the road or not. That is a big advantage to me of a 12 gauge. Okay, the next thing I wanted to look at today was I wanted you guys to be able to look at this 209 shotgun primer adapter up close and out of the gun. So you can see that it has a seating area for a 209 shotgun primer. The 12 gauge goes at the top when you clock it in the gun, so that this cutout at the bottom keeps the ejector from taking it out of the gun or out of the breech once you shove it in there. You've got an O-ring seal, and then you've got a conical part on the bottom here and a hole that passes through for the ignition from your 209 shotgun primer. So this basically becomes the bottom of your shotgun shell if you just cut one of these loads off and had nothing but the brass. The difference is this is going to last forever. The brass is going to wear out over time. But yes, you could just cut that shell off the brass, knock the primer out, put a new primer in every time, and you'd be good to go. The other difference with this is the primer pops in and out with your fingernail. It doesn't have to be seated in the gun, or it doesn't have to be seated in the shell like it does if you're reloading 12 gauge shells. Now I have lots of videos on reloading 12 gauge shells and things like that on the fly in my 21st Century Long Hunter series, and you can look at those to get a better idea. But I am going to be discussing a lot more things in the future in this 21st Century Long Hunter series with some updates. But I wanted to show you this adapter. He does make these for 20 gauge. He makes them for 410. He makes them for all the other gauges on request as well. All you have to do is call him at Short Lane Arms, and he can hook you up with that stuff. Now, he's told me that I think he's not going to be able to ship these until the 27th. Zahn, get out of here, buddy. And as far as the tools go that we discussed yesterday, he doesn't have any of those in stock right now either. Zahn, get out of here. He doesn't have any of those in stock right now either, but he's going to be working on those as well. Now, before we get too deep into how we load this muzzle loader, how we load this 12 gauge and make it a muzzle loader, see how it fires and things like that on some targets. I'll call them targets. They're actually milk jugs, which simulate game to me. I don't use paper targets. I just use a milk jug. Anyway, I wanted to show you, I generally carry a 22 caliber sidearm. And then I carry a few number 6 loads in a pouch on my belt when I'm hunting in the woods in the non-muzzleloader or non-rifle season. When I'm doing that, I can use this on the trap line. I can use this, in camp, things like that. I generally would carry an adapter with me, and it's in this bag, and I'll show you one that's brand new here. And what this is an 8-inch rifled 22 caliber adapter for your 12 gauge. So it's a rifled barrel, basically. It's 8 inches long that you shove into the breech of the 12 gauge, into the chamber. And it's got those O-ring seals right there. And you can fire 22s out of your 12 gauge. So it just makes your ammo more versatile. If you need to take a longer shot or something like that on the trap line, you have that ability. Or if you ran out of 12 gauge, you want to shoot 22s through your 12 gauge, you have that ability to do so. And he makes these adapters in lots and lots of different calibers as well. You can check out his website to get the calibers that you want. He also makes 3-inch adapters that are non-rifled and 3-inch adapters that are rifled. I think he makes some 6-inch adapters. Lots of different options that he has for conversions of shotguns to different calibers, as well as nesting sets that will go from 12 gauge to 20 gauge to 410, which we're going to talk about those in another video pretty soon. I'm going to teach you how to use those in a different way as well that he taught me. And I think it's a very, very viable system and just adds more versatility. So now let's do this. Let's take this system that we've got from yesterday. You can see deer carcass laying over there from yesterday. I got to get rid of today. We're going to load this thing up, and what we're going to do is we're going to load the rifled gun up. We're not going to load the smoothbore. We're going to load the rifled gun up because that's the one I was shooting yesterday. It's the one I did the video on yesterday. It's the one I was hunting with yesterday. And a lot of people questioned how anything would pattern out of that gun as far as shot goes, and whether the chewed ball affected that gun or not. Well, obviously it didn't affect it too much because there's a dead deer. But the point is, I want to show you that no matter what you shoot out of that thing as far as a lead ball goes, at close distance, it's going to be plenty accurate. So let's get this thing loaded up. Now you can see I have 2 of these dilute shell bags, and I kind of swap them back and forth. This is generally the one I use for shotgunning. This is the one I generally use for black powder. But I think I'm going to, during the non-black powder season, start to use this oilcloth one for regular shotgunning as well. And one of the things that I had left in this bag that I didn't change over to my muzzleloader bag when I added some things to my muzzleloader bag yesterday before I started hunting was just a cleaning rope. But again, I generally keep a 6-foot piece of paracord in my pocket. And so as long as I've got a rag and 6 foot of paracord, I've got a way to clean that gun on the fly if I need to swab the barrel out real fast. So it's not a big deal. But having something that you can at least run some sheep's wool or run a rag down through that barrel on the fly with scalding hot water is always a good idea, especially if you're going to be camped overnight and you're not going home where you can clean the gun right away, which in yesterday's case I was, so it didn't really matter. But I didn't cover that yesterday, and it's always a good idea to have some way to be able to swab the barrel and clean that gun a little bit while you're on the fly. One thing that would also be good with these adapters to clean the face of these adapters off with would be some kind of a wire brush, but I just wiped this one off with an oily rag, and they got 90% of the residue off of it, so it's not a big deal to me. Okay, guys, well, I apologize for the butchering mess that you're seeing in the background here. I haven't cleaned up yet from yesterday afternoon, but I'll get to it today. But I don't mess around. Killed it, gutted it, butchered it all the same day. So there's a little bit of a mess here that needs to be cleaned up that I'll get to. So I apologize if that's distracting you in the video. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this tracker model H&R, and we're going to set it up to muzzle load. And a guy had the nerve to tell me yesterday, after I put on the video that I muzzle loaded this gun, that I was poaching because I was using a breech loading gun during the muzzleloader season. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take this adapter, we're going to clock the 12 gauge to the top just like this and shove it in the gun. And we can rotate it around with our thumb a little bit just to get it evened up if we want to. Doesn't have to be perfect. All you're trying to do is make sure that it doesn't eject when you open the gun. And now, before we put a 209 primer in here, we're going to load the gun. However, with an H&R, you could easily, against probably what anybody would probably try to tell you that hunts black powder, you could put a 209 shotgun primer in here now and close the breech and load the gun. Because the H&R system has what's called a crossbar safety mechanism. This hammer cannot hit the primer unless it's from a full cock position that drops the safety bar, the crossbar safety. So, for safety's sake, we're not going to load a primer until after we've loaded the charge, but you could absolutely do it if you wanted to. That's just my opinion. You do what you think is safe for you. Okay, we're going to take our short lane powder measure, and this is 85 grains of powder. All right, again, we're using Pyrodex, so take that with a grain of salt. But this is what I use all the time, and it works fine for me. We're going to take our powder horn, and we're going to fill that dude up. Ish. Again, I'm not worried about it being absolutely perfect at 20 yards. And I'm going to pour powder down the barrel. The next thing I'm going to do is take a small wad of sheep's wool out of my bag. And I'm going to shove about a thumb-sized piece of sheep's wool in there. And I'm going to take that ramrod, that take-apart ramrod. And again, this could be a stick in the woods, okay? Anything that will shove this down all the way and tamp it down will work, all right? We're going to pull that out. Now, the next question is the ball. Now, if we're using a chewed ball or using a normal ball, it's the same. If you look at this, it's a pretty loose fit. So this 720 round ball is made to have a patch. What I usually do, if I'm on the fly, is I'll just take a piece of sheep's wool and I'll put it over that thing and push it down in there and tear it off. And that's what I would use for a patch. And I'll shove that thing down the barrel. All right, at that point, we're going to open the breech and we're going to put a 209 shotgun primer in the gun. So we'll get in our little case here. We'll get a 209 primer out of here. Hands are a little cold this morning. And we'll place it in the gun. And now, that gun's ready to fire a round ball. So let's get us a target set up. Go out here at about the 15, 18 yard mark and see how she does. Okay, from the front of the side-by-side where I'm standing, out to that flushing beam out there with the milk jug on it is 21 paces. So the milk jug's what we're going to be firing at from here. So I'll hone in on that dude and I'll shoot right here from behind the camera. All right, so I zoom the camera out. Looks like that's where we went in, right there at the handle. Probably, I don't know, 2 inches high from where I was actually aiming. But again, there's no question, milk jug is the size of the vitals on a deer. That's a dead deer. Okay, so we open the gun. You can see it does not eject that insert, and you can put your fingernail in there pretty easy. Pull that 209 primer out of there. It's not a big deal. Now, what I generally would do, if I was going to shoot this gun a second time for some reason, I would take that tool and run it through there, just like that, to make sure that that hole is clear. And this tool is absolutely perfect for that. It fits in there just perfect, okay? Then I would proceed to load the gun again. This time, we're gonna load a rifled barrel with shot and try the same experiment at the same yardage, okay? So, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna charge the gun. Powder's in. Wad of sheep's wool over the top of that. Seat it to the bottom. Number 6 shot. Same measure for shot and powder, okay? Keep things simple. Another wad of sheep's wool over the top of that. Take her to the bottom. Ram it tight. Now again, 209 shotgun primer in, lock it up, ready to fire. Okay, new milk jug. Same distance. Shooting again from behind the side by side. Rifled barrel with shot. All right, there you go. Did it pattern great? No, it didn't. Would it have killed something? Yes, it damn sure would have. So in an emergency, if that's the gun you got and you have to shoot shot through it, not a big deal. Is a smooth bore going to pattern better? Absolutely it is. But can you shoot shot from a rifled gun and still get results? Heck yes. That's 21 yards. I've shot lots and lots of squirrels at half that distance, and rabbits as well. So you're going to get, probably twice the amount of shot in them. But that's definitely enough to have killed something. Easy enough, even with probably 8 or 10 holes in that thing. Okay? That's my point. Guys, listen, I appreciate you joining me out here today for another quick video covering some of the versatility of the 12-gauge shotgun and how to use it as a muzzleloader. Like I said, using a rifled barrel with shot is not the optimum thing. It's not something you want to practice doing all the time. Can it be done in an emergency situation or if you need to? Yes, it can. The pattern's not going to be as good, but it can be done. However, for me, generally speaking, I'm a smooth bore guy. I like the smooth bore, partner model, modified choke, 3-inch chamber, H&R shotgun, but there's lots of good shotguns out there. This adapter will work with all these other break open shotguns that people have been asking me questions about, as long as you have a modified or larger choke. If you've got a shotgun with screw-in chokes, like the Stevens 301, I believe is the number of it, the black one that I did a review on, which is a great little shotgun. You want to make sure that the screw-in choke you've got in that thing is a modified choke, and then you're going to be fine. Do you want to shoot round ball, especially patched round ball, out of a full choke shotgun? Probably not the best idea. However, you could shoot shot out of it all day long with that muzzleloading adapter. It's not going to make a bit of difference. So it doesn't matter what shotgun you have, whether it's an H&R or not. Generally speaking, these adapters will work with all of them, depending on the gun, depending on the choke, and you just need to kind of ask around a little bit. But I've used mine in Stevens shotguns, I've used it in my Henry, I've used them in H&Rs, I've used them in NEFs, and it works in all of those as long as you have, like I said, a modified choke or larger. So, hope that answers your question. I appreciate your views, I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I will be back with more in this 21st Century Long Hunter series, talking more about the 12-gauge shotgun, especially some of the reloading and multiple muzzle loading capabilities of this gun. So, stay tuned, guys. Thanks.